This story is titled, "My Wife Suddenly Revealed That I Was Not Her Son's Father While Calling Me a Loser, Admitting She Only Stayed for My Money. So I silently removed the boy from my inheritance list and served her divorce papers with a second DNA test. But the truth was clear when I saw dozens of voicemails the next day." Hey everyone, I've finally reached a point where I'm ready to share the absolute clusterfuck that has been my life for the past year. I'm not entirely sure if this is the right place to post this, but I desperately need to get this off my chest. Maybe sharing my experience will help someone else who's been screwed over like I was. For most of my adult life, I thought I had a pretty decent thing going. Nothing fancy or extraordinary, just normal, everyday stuff that most people would consider a standard American life. I married my high school sweetheart right after we both finished college. Classic move, I know, but we were in love and it felt right at the time. I managed to land a reasonably good job as a civil engineer that paid the bills without working me to death, which felt like winning the lottery in today's economy. We bought a starter home in a decent neighborhood in Sacramento, the kind of place where you don't have to worry about your Amazon packages getting stolen off the porch. I was living what I considered to be a perfectly average American life, and to be honest, I was pretty content with it all. About 2 years into our marriage, my wife Olivia and I had our son. Holy shit, I'll never forget that day. Hands down the best moment of my entire life. Our little dude came out screaming his head off, all red-faced and seemingly mad at the world for bringing him into it. I just stood there crying like a complete idiot while the nurses laughed good-naturedly at my emotional display. Olivia never let me live it down either. "Never seen such a tough guy turn into such a puddle," she'd say whenever she told the story at family gatherings, which was embarrassingly often. Looking at him wrapped in that little hospital blanket, I made a silent promise that I would always protect him, give him a better life than I had, and be there for every important moment, unlike my own father who took off when I was 8. You know, all those sappy promises new parents make when they're overwhelmed with love and responsibility. Fast forward 11 years, and we'd settled into a pretty standard routine. My days consisted of work, taking my son to baseball practice, playing video games with him in the evenings, and hosting barbecues on weekends. About 3 years ago, my mother-in-law moved in with us after her divorce. It wasn't ideal having your mother-in-law all up in your business 24/7, but I dealt with it because she helped with our son sometimes, and Olivia wanted to be there for her mom during that difficult time. Looking back now, I realize my mother-in-law always had this weird vibe around me. She would occasionally make these little comments about my son not looking like me. "He's got your wife's eyes, but I don't see much of you in there," she'd say at family dinners, then laugh as if she'd said something hilarious. I'd just brush it off. The kid definitely had my wife's eyes, her nose, and her hair color, but I always figured he'd grow into my features eventually. Some kids are late bloomers with that stuff, right? My wife would get weirdly defensive whenever anyone brought it up, though. She would quickly jump in with statements like, "He's got his dad's personality, though," or "He laughs just like his dad." I never thought much about it at the time, just assumed she was being protective of both of us. Work was fine. I wasn't setting the world on fire or anything, but I was moving up slowly and the health insurance was solid, which, as it turned out, would be more important than I ever could have imagined. Life was just running along on autopilot until everything went completely nuclear. And man, you never see this kind of shit coming. The first sign that something was wrong came when my son started getting really tired all the time. And I don't mean the normal kind of tired. I'm talking about couldn't even get through a school day kind of exhaustion. Initially, I figured it was just puberty hitting him hard. Or maybe he was staying up too late playing Fortnite when he was supposed to be sleeping. The typical parent assumptions, you know? His teacher called us in for a meeting because he kept falling asleep in class. Following the standard parenting playbook, we grounded him from video games and enforced an earlier bedtime. All the usual disciplinary measures you take when you think your kid is just pushing boundaries. Then came the bruises. big ones that wouldn't go away, showing up for seemingly no reason. Since our son played baseball, we initially thought maybe he was just being rougher during practice and not telling us about it. Kids that age often try to act tough, so it seemed plausible enough. But when he got a nosebleed during dinner one night that took a full 30 minutes to stop, my wife finally took him to the doctor. That visit marked the beginning of the end of life as I knew it. The doctors did some initial blood tests, then more tests, and finally referred us to a specialist. I took a day off work to go with them to that appointment. The specialist had that serious doctor face. You know, the kind that tells you bad news is coming before they even open their mouth. Leukemia. My 11-year-old son had leukemia. I can't even begin to describe what that moment feels like. It's like the floor beneath you suddenly disappears, and you're just falling endlessly. Your brain keeps repeating, "This can't be happening," on a loop while the doctor continues talking about white blood cell counts, treatment protocols, and survival rates. Olivia completely lost it. She was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. I went into what I can only describe as robot mode, taking notes, asking questions, trying to understand everything the specialist was saying because someone had to keep it together. And in that moment, it had to be me. The specialist laid out the treatment plan. Chemotherapy would start immediately. But given the progression and type of leukemia, our son would likely need a bone marrow transplant. Family members are usually the best match, especially parents, so they suggested testing me first since I'm his dad. That night, we sat down with our son Lucas and told him together about his diagnosis. We tried to be as positive as possible under the circumstances. We told him he was going to kick cancer's ass, that the doctors were really good at their jobs, and that we'd be with him every step of the way. He was scared. Of course he was, but tried to act tough. He asked if he'd lose his hair and wanted to know if he could still play video games in the hospital. Kids are amazing that way. They can be facing the scariest thing imaginable and still worry about something as normal as their Minecraft worlds. The next day, I went in for testing to see if I could be his bone marrow donor. It was a simple procedure, just a cheek swab and some blood work. The nurse said they'd rush the analysis given the urgency of Lucas's condition. "We'll know in 48 hours if you're a match," she assured me. I remember thinking, of course I'll be a match. I'm his dad. But that certainty would soon be shattered in the most devastating way possible. 2 days later, the doctor called me back in alone. No wife, no kid, just me sitting in this sterile office while he looked at me with this weird expression that immediately set off alarm bells in my head. "We need to test other family members," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Your markers aren't even remotely close to his." I didn't understand what he was trying to tell me at first. My brain couldn't or wouldn't process the implication. "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. "Can't you use just part of my marrow or something?" The doctor got this uncomfortable look on his face, the kind that doctors get when they have to deliver news that goes beyond their medical expertise and veers into deeply personal territory. "Sir, in these situations, well, sometimes there's a medical explanation, but sometimes there's a paternity issue," he said carefully. The room started spinning around me. "Are you saying he's not my son?" The words felt foreign coming out of my mouth, like I was speaking a language I'd never learned. "I'm saying we need to test other family members urgently. Your son's condition is progressing faster than we'd like," he replied, avoiding a direct answer while still making the reality painfully clear. I sat in my car for an hour after that appointment, just staring at nothing, trying to make sense of what the doctor was suggesting. There had to be some mistake, a lab error, a mix-up with the samples, something, anything other than the devastating possibility that was now looming over me. My phone was blowing up with texts from Olivia, asking what the doctor said, if I was a match, when I was coming home. I couldn't even look at the messages without wanting to vomit. I finally managed to drive home, my hands shaking so badly the whole time that I almost ran a red light because my brain was completely fried. I walked through the door and found my wife and her mom sitting at the kitchen table, both looking tense as hell. They shut up the second I walked in. Real subtle. "Why aren't I a match for my son?" I asked, my voice shaking so badly I could barely get the words out. Olivia started crying immediately. Those tears that I now realize were her classic move whenever she's caught in a lie. Tears on demand, ready whenever needed. Her mom just stared at me, then had the nerve to roll her eyes like I was being dramatic about something trivial. "Tell him," she said to my wife. "He was going to find out eventually." I slammed my hand on the table, probably scaring the shit out of them because I've never been the type to lose my temper. In our 11 years together, Olivia had rarely, if ever, seen me truly angry. "Tell me what?" I demanded. "My son is dying and needs a bone marrow donor. Why am I not a match?" My mother-in-law looked me dead in the eyes, cold as ice, and dropped the bomb that would forever change my life. "Because he's not your child. He never was." Just like that. No sugarcoating, no apology, just a nuclear strike on my entire existence delivered like she was telling me we were out of coffee. The room went dead silent except for Olivia's fake sobbing. I felt like someone was sitting on my chest. I couldn't breathe properly, couldn't think straight. "What the fuck are you talking about?" I finally managed to say after what felt like an eternity of suffocating silence. My mother-in-law shrugged as if we were discussing something as trivial as a movie plot. "She was still seeing her ex when you two got engaged, got pregnant. We figured you were the better option, stable job, good benefits. Her ex was a total loser who couldn't keep employment for more than a few months." My wife finally spoke up, wiping her tears away. "I was going to tell you eventually," she said, as if that somehow made it better. "Eventually? It's been 11 years!" I was shouting now, louder than I'd ever shouted in my life. "Our son has leukemia. He needs a match now." "Well, now you know," my mother-in-law said dismissively. "We'll need to contact his real father." Something in me just snapped when she said, "real father." I'd been there for every fever, every nightmare, every school project, every baseball game, every single moment of his life. I was his real father. The fact that some other dude's DNA was in him didn't change the past 11 years of love, care, and commitment. "Get out," I said, suddenly deadly calm. The kind of calm that's scarier than any shouting could ever be. "What?" my wife asked, looking genuinely shocked, as if she thought I'd just accept this revelation and move on with our lives. "Get out of my house, now. Pack a bag and leave," I repeated, my voice steady despite the rage and pain coursing through me. "You can't just kick us out," my mother-in-law started with that entitled tone she always uses when she thinks she can bulldoze her way through any situation. "Watch me," I replied. "You've got 30 minutes. And while you're packing, write down the contact info for your ex. My son needs a donor." They tried arguing, but I just walked away, went to the backyard and called my lawyer. I explained everything, and the poor dude probably thought I was having a mental breakdown. To his credit, he remained professional and immediately stepped into action mode. "Stay calm," he advised. "Document everything. Don't leave the house under any circumstances. They leave, not you." He promised to start the divorce paperwork immediately, told me to forward any medical records proving what happened, and reminded me that I needed to focus on my son's treatment while he handled the legal storm. Olivia came out to the yard where I was still on the phone with my lawyer. Her eyes were all puffy, and she was clearly trying to play the victim in a situation that she had created through years of deception. "You're really throwing away our family now when our son needs us both?" she asked, her voice breaking for maximum dramatic effect. I just stared at her, trying to comprehend how she could possibly frame this as me destroying our family. "Did you ever love me, or was I just a walking ATM this whole time?" I finally asked. "Of course I loved you, I still do," she insisted. "This doesn't change anything between us." Unreal. The audacity of that statement left me momentarily speechless. "Doesn't change anything? You've been lying to me since day one. Everything about our life together is a lie," I said. my voice rising despite my attempts to stay calm. "Not everything," she said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away like she was covered in acid. Even the thought of her touching me made my skin crawl. Then a horrifying thought hit me. "Does he know?" I asked. "Does Lucas know I'm not his biological father?" "No, God, no," she said quickly. "And there's no reason for him to find out. This can stay between us." I laughed, actually laughed. The situation was so absurd it crossed into darkly comical territory. Stay between us? The doctors need his biological father's information now. He needs a bone marrow transplant, or did you forget our son has cancer because you're so busy trying to cover your own ass? That shut her up. She went back inside and wrote down her ex's name and last known contact information. Apparently, they hadn't talked in years, but her mom had kept tabs on him through mutual friends. Because of course she did. I called the hospital right away and gave them the information. They said they'd try to locate the guy as soon as possible. An hour later, my wife and her mom were gone. They tried to take a bunch of valuable stuff with them, but I told them I had already photographed everything in the house, and anything missing would be reported stolen. My mother-in-law even tried to take some antique jewelry that belonged to my mom. The absolute nerve of these people was truly staggering. I spent that night sitting in Lucas's room while he slept, just watching him breathe. He looked so small and pale already from the first round of chemo. I kept thinking about all the moments from his life, all those memories that made him my son regardless of DNA. The next morning was hell. I had to take Lucas to his hospital appointment for more tests. He asked where his mom was. "She had to take care of some stuff with Grandma," I said, hating that I had to lie to him. "She'll visit you at the hospital later." The doctors took more blood, ran more tests. His oncologist pulled me aside to say his numbers weren't good. The cancer was aggressive, and we needed to find a donor match as soon as possible or start looking at more experimental treatments. I broke down in the hospital bathroom after hearing this, the only time I've cried through this whole mess. I punched the wall so hard I fractured a knuckle, which was stupid because Lucas needed me in one piece. But the overwhelming anger, betrayal, and fear all came crashing down at once, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. When I got back to his room, there was a text from Olivia asking if she could come see him. I said yes because, despite everything, he needed his mom. I told her not to bring her mother and not to talk to me. She showed up looking like shit, which gave me a tiny bit of satisfaction. She didn't speak to me, just went straight to our son and acted like Supermom, brought his favorite comics and some new video game. I left them alone and went to talk to the doctors about next steps. The hospital had a whole team working to locate the biological father through my wife's hesitant cooperation. Turns out she'd been keeping tabs on him all these years, just in case, which made me wonder if she'd ever actually cut contact with him at all. I also wondered how many other lies she'd told me over the years. If she could lie about something this huge, what else was fake? Our entire relationship. Every moment I thought we were happy? That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every memory, trying to spot the signs I missed. Times she was weird about him not looking like me. Times she got defensive about paternity jokes from friends. And her mom's, all those snide little comments over the years suddenly made sense. The betrayal was so complete, so thorough, I couldn't even process it. I didn't know who I was anymore. If I wasn't this kid's dad, but then I'd remember, I am his dad. Maybe not biologically, but in every way that actually matters. The next morning they found him, the biological father. The hospital called to say they'd made contact and he was willing to come in for testing immediately. He showed up at the hospital that afternoon. I was sitting in Lucas's room while he was sleeping off his latest round of meds when a nurse came in and said someone wanted to talk to me in the consultation room. I figured it was another doctor or something, but it was him. He wasn't what I expected at all. In my head, I'd built this guy up to be some kind of player who'd seduced my wife, maybe taller than me, better looking, whatever, but he was just normal. Average height, starting to go bald, Dad bod. He looked scared shitless, honestly. "I'm Tyler," he said, holding out his hand. I didn't take it. "You're the biological father," I said. It wasn't a question. He nodded, looking like he might throw up. "I had no idea. None. She told me she miscarried." Well, that was a twist I didn't see coming. "What?" "Yeah, we dated in college, broke up, then hooked up one last time before she got serious with you," he explained. "She called a few weeks later to say she was pregnant but lost the baby. I never questioned it." "Great. So she lied to everyone. My wife was a fan-fucking-tastic human being." "So you never knew you had a son?" I asked, still trying to process this new information. "No, I swear to God I would have been there if I knew. I wouldn't have—" He trailed off, obviously uncomfortable. "Wouldn't have what?" "Let another man raise my kid thinking it was his," he finished quietly. We sat in silence for a minute, two guys whose lives got completely fucked by the same woman. "I've got 2 other kids now," he said finally. "Married, decent job." I didn't care about his life story, but I needed to know one thing. "Are you a match for the bone marrow?" "They're testing me now. Should know soon," he replied, then hesitated. Can I see him?" Every part of me wanted to say no. This stranger had no right to my son. But that wasn't fair to Lucas, who needed every possible chance at survival. "Not yet," I said firmly. "He doesn't know about any of this. He's dealing with enough right now." Tyler nodded. "I understand. I just want to help, whatever he needs." The doctor came in then with the preliminary results. Tyler was potentially a match. They needed to do more specific testing, but it looked promising. This was the first piece of good news in this whole nightmare. I left them to discuss the medical details and went back to Lucas's room. He was awake now, surrounded by tubes, his skin as pale as paper. The sight of him looking so fragile broke my heart all over again. "Where'd you go, Dad?" he asked, his voice all raspy from the treatments and medications. Dad. That word hit different now, but it was still true, wasn't it? Biology aside, I was the one who had been there for him every day of his life. "Just talking to the doctors, buddy." "How you feeling?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Like crap," he said, attempting to smile despite how awful he clearly felt. "Where's Mom?" I'd been dreading that question. "She'll be by later," I told him. Another lie to protect him. The lies were piling up, but these ones at least were to shield him, not for selfish reasons like the ones his mother had been telling for years. That day, I met with my lawyer who'd come to the hospital. He had me sign a stack of papers: divorce filing, emergency custody order, DNA test request for legal purposes, asset protection documents. I was on autopilot, just signing where he pointed. "What about his biological father?" I asked. "What rights does he have?" "That's complicated," my lawyer said, choosing his words carefully. "Given the circumstances and the length of time you've been the child's father, you have a strong case for maintaining primary custody. But biologically, he has rights too if he wants to pursue them. One more thing to worry about, but first, we had to get Lucas through this medical crisis." That night, I slept in the chair by my son's bed. The hospital staff were kind enough to bring me a blanket and pillow, recognizing I wasn't going anywhere. Around 3 a.m., Lucas woke up sick. The nurses rushed in, administering more medications and running more tests. Dawn was breaking by the time he fell back asleep, exhausted from the night's ordeal. My phone had been blowing up all night with texts, from Olivia, from her mom, from friends who'd obviously heard some version of what was happening. I ignored them all, unable to deal with any of it while focusing on my son's needs. Tyler came back in the morning for more testing. We passed each other in the hallway and exchanged an awkward nod. What do you say to the guy who unknowingly fathered the child you've raised for 11 years? There's no etiquette guide for that situation. The doctor caught me getting coffee in the family room, and his expression immediately told me he had news. "Good news," he said, and those 2 simple words nearly made my knees buckle with relief. Tyler is a match, one of the best matches we could hope for. Relief hit me so hard I had to sit down. "So what happens now?" I managed to ask. We'll prep both of them for the procedure. There's some paperwork, some more tests, but we can move quickly given the urgency of your son's condition." For the first time in days, I felt something like hope. Lucas had a chance. That's all that mattered right now. But the nightmare was far from over. My mother-in-law showed up that afternoon, walking right into Lucas's room like she owned the place. I was in the bathroom and came out to find her sitting by his bed, filling his head with God knows what. The audacity of this woman never ceased to amaze me. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my voice controlled for Lucas's sake. "Visiting my grandson," she said, defiant as ever. "You can't keep me away from him." "Dad, why is Grandma staying at a hotel?" Lucas asked, looking confused. "And Mom too? What's going on?" I shot my mother-in-law a look that would have killed her if that was possible. "Let's talk outside," I told her, barely containing my rage. Once in the hallway, I let her have it. "You have some nerve showing up here." "He's my grandson. I have every right," she shot back. "You have no rights. You're the one who encouraged your daughter to lie to me for 11 years. You're the architect of this whole disaster." She puffed up like an angry cat. "You should be grateful. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't even have him in your life." The audacity of this statement nearly made me lose it completely. Grateful? For being lied to? For raising another man's child without my knowledge or consent? For finding out during a medical crisis that could kill him? A nurse approached, looking concerned about our rising voices. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to keep your voice down." I took a deep breath, trying to regain my composure. "Sorry. This person was just leaving." "I most certainly am not," she protested, digging in her heels as always. "Yes, you are," I said firmly, "or I'm calling security. Your choice." She left, but not before promising this wasn't over. I had no doubt she'd be back, causing more problems at the worst possible time. Back in Lucas's room, he was full of questions I couldn't answer yet. "Why is everyone fighting? Are you and Mom getting divorced?" The innocent questions nearly broke me. How do you explain to an 11-year-old that his entire life is built on a lie while he's fighting cancer? "There's some grown-up stuff going on," I said carefully, sitting on the edge of his bed. "But nothing for you to worry about right now. Your job is to focus on getting better." He didn't buy it. He's always been a perceptive kid, but he was too tired to push the issue. He fell asleep shortly after, the medications and his body's fight against the cancer sapping all his energy. I sat there watching him sleep, wondering how the hell we were going to get through this. One day at a time, I guess. One disaster at a time. The next day was the big one. The medical team was prepping Tyler for the bone marrow donation while Lucas was getting pumped full of medications to prepare his system for the transplant. The doctors explained everything to Lucas in kid-friendly terms, but the reality was they were essentially wiping out his entire immune system to make room for the new cells. My heart broke watching him try to act tough when he asked if it would hurt. I could see the fear in his eyes despite his brave front. The doctor assured him he'd be asleep during the procedure and wouldn't feel a thing, though he might feel pretty crummy afterward as his body rebuilt itself with the new cells. I didn't get to meet with Tyler before the procedure, which was probably for the best. The whole situation was awkward enough without having to make small talk with the guy who unknowingly fathered my son because my wife is a pathological liar. Olivia showed up right before they took Lucas to pre-op. I'd been there all night and looked like warmed over death. Unshaven, rumpled clothes, dark circles under my eyes. She, of course, looked fresh and put together, ready to play the devoted mother role for anyone watching. I tried not to let it get to me. This wasn't about us. It was about Lucas. Watching him try to be brave as they prepared to take him to surgery destroyed me inside. 11 years old and facing something most adults would crumble under. I squeezed his hand and told him he was the toughest kid I know, trying to keep my voice steady. The last thing he asked before the pre-op meds kicked in was if I'd be there when he woke up. I promised wild horses couldn't drag me away. It was the easiest promise I'd ever made. After they wheeled him out, I was stuck in the empty room with Olivia. The silence was suffocating. She announced she was staying until he was out of recovery. Fine by me. We sat in stony silence for a while before she tried asking about Tyler. I shut that down real quick, reminding her I'd been a little busy making sure our son didn't die to play catch-up on her ex's life story. She tried playing the victim card again, saying I was being unfair. That set me off. Nothing about this situation was fair to anyone, especially not to Lucas, who was fighting for his life because of her lies. The surgery took 6 hours, the longest 6 hours of my life. Olivia and I sat on opposite sides of the waiting room, not speaking. Her mom tried to show up again but got turned away at the reception desk. Small victories. The surgeon finally emerged looking tired but satisfied. Everything went well with both patients, he told us, and I felt like I could breathe for the first time in hours. Olivia immediately asked when we could see our son. The doctor explained he'd be in isolation for at least a week while his immune system rebuilt itself. We could see him through the glass, but no direct contact would be allowed. A week of not being able to hug my son or comfort him properly. But if that's what it took to save him, I'd do it without hesitation. They let us peek in on him in recovery. He looked so small surrounded by all those machines, pale as a ghost with dark circles under his eyes. I pressed my hand against the glass like I could somehow reach him through it, wishing more than anything I could be in there with him. The doctor pulled us aside to discuss post-hospital care. Lucas would need a sterile environment with minimal germ exposure until his immune system strengthened. I informed him I'd already started deep cleaning the house, installing new air filters, the works. I'd been reading everything I could find about caring for bone marrow transplant patients. The doctor looked uncomfortably between me and Olivia, acknowledging the complicated family situation without directly addressing it, but emphasizing that Lucas would need stability and consistent care during his recovery. I assured him firmly that our son would have everything he needed at his home with me. Olivia started to protest, but the doctor shut it down, saying he didn't need to know our personal details, just that his patient would have proper care. The next few days blurred together. Hospital shifts, doctor meetings, and avoiding Olivia as much as possible. We took different shifts at the hospital, with brief, awkward handoffs where we'd update each other on his condition before one of us would leave. The divorce proceedings moved insanely fast thanks to my lawyer, who was absolutely crushing it. He got an emergency hearing scheduled based on the extraordinary circumstances. Olivia tried to play victim in court, claiming I was abandoning her during a family medical crisis. The judge shut that down real quick after seeing the DNA results and hospital records. 5 days into Lucas's isolation, Tyler asked to meet up at the hospital cafeteria. He looked exhausted, still bandaged from the bone marrow procedure. We made awkward small talk for a few minutes until he mentioned our son, and that phrase hit me hard. I corrected him instantly, perhaps more harshly than necessary. He might have the DNA, but that kid's strength, his character, his personality, all of that came from me, the one who raised him. After an uncomfortable pause, Tyler surprised me by admitting he didn't want to disrupt our lives further. He recognized me as Lucas's real dad, brushing off biology as just DNA. The guy was nothing like I'd imagined in my anger. He said he'd like to know Lucas eventually, but would follow my lead on when and how that happened. His priority was the kid's well-being, not asserting his newfound paternal rights. We agreed to table the discussion about his involvement until Lucas was healthier and had processed the impending divorce. First priority was getting him through this medical crisis. The rest could wait. By day 7, the doctors were cautiously optimistic. The new cells were grafting and his numbers were improving slightly. They let me wear a sterile suit to sit with him for 30 minutes, the first time I'd been able to touch him in a week. The kid was weak as a kitten, but still managed to smile when I walked in. He made some joke about me looking like an astronaut in the protective gear. Even sick as hell, he was trying to make me feel better. That's my boy. Throughout everything, Olivia kept trying different ways to get back in my good graces, apologies, excuses, and promises to fix things. I shut it all down, only talking to her about Lucas's medical care. The nurses caught on quick to the tension between us and started scheduling our visits separately to avoid any conflicts that might upset Lucas. Discharge day finally arrived. When the doctor gave the all clear, I barely held it together. I made it to my car before completely breaking down, the relief and anger crashing over me in waves. But I pulled myself together because Lucas needed me to be strong. Driving home, watching him rest peacefully in the back seat, I made a promise to myself. No matter what happened, I'd always be his dad first. The first night home, Lucas was quiet, too quiet. This kid who would normally talk my ear off about video games, baseball, and school drama barely said 2 words. When I was getting him settled into bed, he finally asked the question I'd been dreading. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" I couldn't lie to him. I told him yes, we were. He started crying, asking if it was his fault, if it was because he got sick. It broke my fucking heart into a million pieces. I assured him none of this was remotely his fault, that grown-ups sometimes have problems that have nothing to do with their kids. He asked when his mom was coming home. That question sucked because I knew she wasn't ever coming back. I told him his mom would be staying somewhere else but would still see him all the time. The kid fell asleep crying, and I sat outside his room drinking coffee until about 3 in the morning, feeling like the world's biggest failure even though I hadn't done anything wrong. The bone marrow transplant was working though, thank God. His counts improved a little every day. The home health nurse came by daily to check on him and draw blood. Lucas hated the needles, but was a trooper about it, never complaining too much. Olivia was allowed supervised visits 3 times a week. The hospital provided a social worker to oversee these visits since the court was concerned about her emotional stability and potential for parental alienation. Fancy terms for might say crazy shit to turn the kid against his dad. Those visits were awkward as hell. She'd show up with new toys, games, anything to buy his affection. Lucas was happy to see her, but got tired easily. The social worker was good about ending visits when she saw him fading. About 2 months after coming home, I finally had the conversation I'd been dreading, telling Lucas the truth about his biological father. I had a child psychologist help me prepare, and honestly, it was the toughest talk of my life. I sat him down, reassured him I'd always be his dad no matter what DNA said, then gently explained that his mom hadn't been fully honest and that the guy who donated bone marrow was actually his biological father. He got upset, of course. Asked a lot of hard questions. Why his mom lied. If he had to call this other guy dad. If this was why we were divorcing. I answered the best I could without trashing his mom, though God knows I wanted to. We both cried, and in the end he hugged me tight and said, "You're still my dad," which completely broke me all over again. A few days later, he surprised me by saying he wanted to meet Tyler. Though the first meeting was awkward as hell, they bonded over Minecraft, finding common ground through the game. Afterward, Lucas had more questions about siblings and family stuff, but I assured him nothing would change our relationship. He'd always be my kid no matter what. At the final divorce hearing, the judge gave me primary custody, the house, and most assets. Olivia got standard visitation, her car, and a fair, honestly generous financial settlement considering what she'd done. She freaked out in court, nearly got herself held in contempt, and her lawyer had to practically drag her out. Later, she tried to pick Lucas up from school on a day that wasn't hers, got caught, and was escorted off by police, which forced the court to tighten visitation rules even more. Tyler and I separately arranged his visitation schedule, supervised by therapists, so Lucas could gradually meet his other family at a pace that felt comfortable for him. My ex-mother-in-law eventually violated her restraining order, got hit with community service, then moved away, telling anyone who would listen that I had ruined her family. Whatever helps her sleep at night, I guess. By the 6-month mark post-diagnosis, Things had settled into a new normal. Lucas was officially in remission. He was back at school part-time, and I was working from home to be available for him whenever he needed me. Olivia had her visitation schedule that she mostly stuck to, probably because she knew any deviation would result in even more restrictions. We kept the therapy going even after Lucas physically recovered. Best decision ever. It gave him a safe space to process everything without worrying about hurting anyone's feelings. I started dating again recently. Nothing serious, just coffee here and there with a pediatric nurse I met through Lucas's hospital stays. She gets the whole complicated family situation, and Lucas likes her, which matters more than anything. One night, Lucas beat me at some video game we'd been playing together and looked nervous about my reaction. I just laughed and messed up his hair. "That's my boy," I said without thinking. The smile he gave me in return was worth everything we'd been through. So yeah, that's where things stand now. Life turned upside down, but we survived. More than survived, we found a new kind of strength I never knew we had. For those wondering, yes, Tyler is legally recognized as the biological father now, but I maintain primary custody and all parental rights. He's cool with that arrangement, saying I earned it by being there for 11 years when he couldn't be. The one good thing that came out of this nightmare? I know who my real family is now, and I know what I'm made of. At the end of the day, being a father isn't about DNA. It's about showing up day after day through the worst life can throw at you and loving your kid no matter what.